There's this thing in my family that comes up every time we go out to a restaurant. We sit down, have a big meal, and at some point, my mother-in-law pushes away her plate and declares, I couldn't possibly eat another bite. I have no room for anything. Then the waiter shows up with the dessert menu. She looks at it because looking doesn't hurt. There is this moment of silence, like we are at, I don't know, a negotiation table, something very important is about to happen. We look at each other, we look at the waiter looks back, the verdict hangs in the balance, and then, pressed by the inquisitive look of the waiter, which is not even looking at us, my mother-in-law delivers the verdict through the universal law. There is an additional stomach for desserts. יש קיבה נוספת לקינוחים, she says in Hebrew. Now, I do realize, this is an odd story to tell at Kol Nidrei. Tonight, dessert. Tonight begins the long fast of Yom Kippur, when many of us will be walking around with our stomachs empty. Maybe it feels oxymoronic to talk about the things we can stomach or can't stomach. But in a way, that's the point. Yom Kippur is not about food at all. It's about what we choose to make space for, what we struggle to digest, what might be negotiable, and what we refuse to swallow. If I'm honest, this Yom Kippur, the experience of saturation isn't just in my head. I feel it in my body, a tight chest, a constant ache of anguish that leaves me heavy and tired. It's not abstract. I believe many of you know that feeling. Many of us are carrying it because Jewish life today often feels like that full plate, much to hold, too much to process. Anti-Semitism is racing around us. The politics of Israel are weighing on us. Generational divides are pulling us in different directions. Add to that the social media battles, the whiplash of news cycles, the pressure to take a stand that will inevitably be wrong in someone's eyes, and our inner stomachs are already so full. So the question on this night of Kol Nidrei is, what do we still make room for? And what can we stomach? What is negotiable and what is not? And this much is clear. Who we are, even when it feels heavy, It's not negotiable. The Talmud tells us a story about Rabbi Eleazar ben Shimon, who is riding home after a great day of learning, feeling pretty self-satisfied. He meets a man on the road and says, "How ugly are you? Are all the people of your town as ugly as you are?" Without missing a beat, the man responded to him, "Go tell the artist who made me how ugly is his vessel." Now, why bring this story here? Because in a time of identity politics and endless levels, Jews get told too often that we are ugly. We don't fit the boxes. Too white, not enough white, too powerful, too vulnerable, too self-centered, Ashkenazis, Sepharadis. And if you are an American Jew of Israeli origin, like the Israelis, yet there's another layer that complicates the picture. We are constantly presented with false dichotomies. The social climate suggests we must choose between being American or being Jewish, between being liberal or Zionist, between belonging or standing apart. But our truth is not either or. It is both and. It's not ugly, even if it doesn't fit someone's boxy definition of beauty. If they don't like how we look, they can take it up with the one who made us. Our intersectionality isn't a liability. Our calling is not to apologize for the complexity of who we are, but to claim it as a blessing, not a curse. We are people trained to hold multiple truths at once, to stand in all our layered complexity, American and Jewish, liberal and Zionist, vulnerable and strong. Is itself an act of resistance. And my friends, these artificial categories not only divide us, but push us to the absurd of extremes. And all this while anti-Semitism in the United States is rising all around us, on campuses, online, even in neighborhoods we thought were safe. And what happens? The conversation becomes quickly a fight about who is responsible. The left blames the right. The right blames the left. When we start blaming each other on top of it, it becomes unbearable. The external pressure is already choking, it's asphyxiating us. The internal one, corrosive, disgusting to the soul. The Talmud tells us that during the Roman siege of Jerusalem, the city, and hear this out, because it is a detail very often forgotten. During the Roman siege of the city of Jerusalem, the city had food stores that could have lasted 21 years. But Jewish zealots, enraged by moderates who wanted negotiations and possibly compromise, burned the warehouses. Famine spread. A wealthy woman, her name was Marta Batbaitos, sent her servant with gold to buy flour, but each time the servant arrived to the places where it was possible to buy, the flour was gone. Finally, she took her silver and gold and went out herself barefoot into the streets. She stepped into a dung, cried and cried and cried out in disgust, and collapsed. Some say that in her last moment she hurled her gold and silver into the air, but wealth could not shield her. She was not killed by battle wounds, not even by starvation. It was disgust that brought her down. The real end of Jerusalem was when Jews laid siege to one another. That's the hatred the rabbis in the Talmud teach us we could not stomach, we could not digest. This too is our warning. We might feel trapped, but when we burn our own storehouses, when American Jews turn on each other, accuse one another of betrayal, dismiss one another across ideological or generational divides, the disgust multiplies. We forget the basics, neglect real threats, and die of accidents, negligence, despair. The situation is already difficult to stomach. Let's not make it impossible. And so, let's be clear about one more thing. We must stop doing the math of blame, asking what we did wrong, what we did to deserve this anti-Semitism that is happening to us. Please, do me and all of us a favor and knock it off. Knock it off. They hate because they hate. We don't control it. And it is not our fault. That's a full stop. Now, of course, even when it feels hard to stomach, to digest, to discuss, we still have to make room for important discussions and deep differences of opinion about anti-Semitism, about October 7th, about the war, about our captives. Last August, the Jewish Federation of New York announced a $1 million grant to Israel Aid for humanitarian relief in Gaza. In response, Liel Leibovich, the editor of Tablet magazine, published a piece called the troubled and the committed. His essay was a direct reaction to that decision. He argued that in order to please the troubled, Jewish institutions were betraying the committed. He borrowed language from an earlier essay by Rabbi Doniel Harman and insisted that in reality, there are only two possible outcomes. Either you are troubled, which means you are drifting away, or you are committed, which means you silence the trouble. In his words, I'm quoting, just in case. The troubled, committed always become the troubled, uncommitted. And then he pushed further. Don't worry, he says. If the troubled leave us, after all, Rashi, the medieval commentator, reminded us that only a fifth of all Israelites chose to leave Egypt. The rest stayed behind, content with a steady job and guaranteed meals. In other words, he explains, we don't need everyone. A faithful minority is enough. These people are here for the fight and win, he concluded. Around the same time, Yossi Klein Alevi published a very different kind of essay in the time of Israel called Our Season of Reckoning. Our Season of Reckoning. Israel's moral crossroads in Gaza. Yossi insisted that moral reckoning is not betrayal. It is actually fidelity. He wrote, our strength depends on our moral credibility with our children, with the diaspora, and ultimately with God. For him, the real danger is silencing the troubled. Troubled committed. Those who refuse to walk away but also refuse to stop asking the hardest questions. And then, in conversation on the For Heaven's Sake podcast, Rabbi Doniel Harman and Yossi, the same scholar who wrote the article, took up Liel's challenge directly. They revisited Doniel's framework of 4 quadrants. The untroubled committed, you can tell me if you find yourself in one of these categories. You don't have to say it out loud, but you can think it for yourself. The untroubled committed, the troubled committed, the troubled uncommitted, and the untroubled uncommitted. Doniel argued that the heart of Jewish life is precisely that second category, the troubled committed. To be a Jew, he explained, is to love, and therefore, to be troubled. To be troubled, and therefore, to remain committed. And here's where I most profoundly disagree with Liel Leibovich. He says that to stay committed, you must resolve and let go of your troubles. Push them aside and move on. But friends, that is not where we are. We are not at the Red Sea, tambourines in hand, dancing in our way to freedom. We are standing on the debris of destruction. We are standing on the debris of destruction, of the devastation of war, the longest war in the history of the state of Israel, of captivity, of anti-Semitism, of bigotry, and the list goes on. Our storehouses are burned. We are pointing fingers at each other. So don't talk to me about tambourines. Don't talk to me about the Song of the Sea. That's not where we are. The Talmud tells us that when Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Eleazar ben Azariah saw foxes roaming through the ruins of the temple, they wept. But Rabbi Akiva laughed. He said, if the prophecy of destruction came true, then so will the prophecy of redemption. And you know what? Redemption did come. Not in the way Rabbi Akiva may have imagined it, with zealots rebuilding the temple, but with a different vision, one of creativity, the one that gave birth to Judaism as we know it today. The Talmud in Gittin tells us that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lived under the same siege that killed Martha bat Baitos. He knew what others refused to admit. Jerusalem would not survive. So he told his students, get me out in a coffin. Smuggled past the zealots, he was brought before the Roman general Vespasian. Realizing the opportunity for negotiation, Vespasian said to him, ask of me. All of a sudden became a genie. Then Rabbi Yochanan thought for a moment and asked for three things. He said, Ten li et Yavne b'chachameya. Give me Yavne and its sages to keep wisdom alive. The family of Rabban Gamliel, continuity of leadership, and doctors for Rabbi Tzadok. Rabbi Tzadok was the embodiment of justice, to heal his wounds. Rabbi Tzadok's stomach had collapsed from, remember the stomach? Collapsed for 40 years of fasting to save Jerusalem. He just couldn't digest what was happening. He just couldn't digest it. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai could not save the temple, but he saved Yavne. And Yavne saved them and us. Yavne, the word Yavne, the city of Yavne, the one of the Talmud and the modern one in Israel, and the school a mile away. It also reads, Ibaneh, same letters. It will be built. It will be built. in the shadow of destruction, the rabbis built a house of study, a Beit Midrash, making dialogue of all things, dialogue at the core, at the center of Jewish tradition. They emerged from the place in which people were incapable of talking to one another, and they put dialogue at the center, at the core of our tradition. They faced the ruins and they reimagined tradition, our tradition, in a time of loss. And in that time of loss, they chose creativity. In a world of collapse, they chose Yavne. They chose to build. That is our call tonight. In the midst of this devastation, we can build. Yavne is us. We are the sages. Our diversity is our wisdom. Yavne, another twist, in Hebrew letters is also an acronym for the symbols of Avdalah, of the Avdalah. Yud for wine, yain. Bet for besamim, fragrances. Nun, ne, yavne, for ner, the light. And hey, the fourth blessing of Avdalah, a mavdil ben kodesh lechol, for distinction. Yavne. Each one of these symbols are tools of resilience. Yain, symbolizing joy. Besamin, the fragrances symbolizing the yearning. The ner, the candle, symbolizing the light and the courage to face new directions. And so, Avdalah, the distinction, the fourth one, also the courage to distinguish what we must release and what we must build anew. Every time we see those symbols, we are reminded not only of the sacred time we leave behind, but also that we are entering the space of creation, and that we are called to be builders in that world. Yavne. We must, I hope we gather the strength to reject what poisons us, what we cannot stomach, and what must remain non-negotiable in our lives. Let's say our relationships. May we have the courage to resist short-sighted cynicism and to recognize the beauty of holding multiple truths. We are not ugly. We are troubled and committed. May the ache of anguish and our overwhelm dissipate as we lean into our commitment and our troubles, hold on to them. Don't let them go. Our criticism, our disappointment needs to be spelled out together with our commitment. And when they come together, may we experience the healing and the creativity of building. And may we always, always leave room for dessert, for sweetness, for nuance, for love, for hope. Because our humanity, our decency, and our identities, beyond being non-negotiables, they are the beauty that we bring into the world. Chatima tova, Shana tova.